I want to talk to you today about something I'm calling a three-piece puzzle. This is a little bit of a confusion for a lot of people, so I just want to go over it real quickly. I'm peeking back in my notes here real quick because I talked about I talked about this domain name scam that drives me crazy. You got to flip back and find the episode for that. That was episode 16. I talked about this domain name scam. So go find episode 16 and watch me rant about that. And then a few weeks before that, in episode 14, we talked about the 7 different kinds of websites that I can create. And leading up to that, we talked a little bit about website hosting and what that is. So I'm going to refer you back to those episodes where I talk about those pieces by themselves. Episode 14, I talked about website hosting. And then in episode 16, I talked about a caution about your domain name. So refer back to those episodes to hear me talk more. But what I want to talk to you about today is that there's a couple pieces to this puzzle. And there's confusion because sometimes all 3 of these pieces could be set up at one location, and sometimes they could all be set up at different websites and different locations, and you might not be aware of what that means. So really quickly, I just want to go over these 3 different pieces that are all necessary and are all related, but they might be set up a little differently depending on your situation. So let's start with your domain name. Your domain name is your address of your website. And it's also going to become the address of your email address, probably. So that's your .com, if you will, right? Like for example, gilbertstudios.com is one of my domain names. Websitetreasurehunt.com, mywebsitesafari.com. So the first thing that you do is you buy your domain name or have someone like me buy the domain name on your behalf. By the way, everything that I'm saying in the next few minutes, it's something that you could do yourself in your own directly in your own control panel, or it's something that you could ask me to do for you, and I would be happy to do that on your behalf. Whatever your comfort level is, I have clients all across the whole range. Some clients like to do it and they like to get in and buy a new domain name and that kind of thing. And some clients are like, hey, dude, I never want to touch that at all. You just do it for me and let me know when it's up for renewal. So wherever you are, we can handle that, okay? So it all starts with your domain name. I'm going to use a curse word. You could go to GoDaddy. You could go to one of these websites, right? And buy your domain name, buy your .com. That just gives you the address. So you've purchased the right to be able to do that. You're going to pay anywhere from $20 to $40 a year for your domain name, depending on who you go through and all the features they're going to give you as part of it. Okay, so that's the first step, your domain name. That's the address. You need that first. Then you're going to have your website hosting. Your website hosting is where your website lives on the internet. It's kind of like, I like to say it's the apartment on the internet that we're renting for your website to live in. So your website hosting essentially is a server. It's a computer physically sitting somewhere, and we're renting space on that computer for your website to live on. So it's perfectly possible that you buy your domain name and you buy your website hosting in the same company and they're already linked together. That's totally possible. Or you could buy your domain name over here and then you could hire CJ to build your website, and CJ builds the website over here on my server. You could keep your domain name right where it is and then point it over to CJ's server, and then I'm providing your website hosting, and now your website is live on your domain name. So it's going through your domain name and then coming over to your website host. And now your website is showing up at your domain, at your .com. So again, those 2 pieces could be at the same company, but they could also just as easily be at 2 different companies, and there's no problem whatsoever with that, as long as it's set up the right way. So those are the 2 pieces. We've got your domain name, that's the address. And then we've got your website hosting. That's where your website lives on a server, on a computer that's connected to the internet at all times. Okay? Let me know if you have any questions at all as we go. The third piece is your email setup. And once again, all of these things could be set up at the same company, or it could be 2 different companies, or it could even be 3 different companies. So for example, let's say I'm going to give you 2 scenarios. You could have bought your domain name at GoDaddy, for example, and then you called CJ and said, CJ, build me a website. So I build you a website over here on my server, so I will become your website host. Then we point your domain name to the website host, which is me. Now your website is live. And I can also provide your email service for you, create the email address and your email address, for example, like cj@askawebgeek.com. That's an email address. And where it's set up and who's actually providing that service could also be 2 different things. For example, I'm a huge fan of Gmail and Google. So I actually use Gmail. I use the Google mail system to actually provide my email, even though I have the addresses and things set up through my website host. Did it just get a little confusing? It might. But the point that I want to make is all of these pieces could be set up at different companies and they could still all seamlessly work together. Or they could be all set up in the same company. You could call me right from the start and say, CJ, buy my domain name. Okay, got it, .com. Let's set up your host, let's set up your email, and all of those pieces are inside my control panel. We can set you up with a Gmail account or G Suites, or if you like Microsoft, you like Outlook, we can do it that way too. I talked about email options a few shows back as well. Those are the 3 pieces to the puzzle. I know it's super confusing because it could all be in one company. It could be spread out at a couple different companies. And if you're not sure, that's okay too. We've got resources that we can check. So just give me a call, send me an email. We can do a real quick search. I can look it up. We can see where your domain name's registered. We can see where it's pointing as to who your host is. We could even see where that's pointing to who your email provider is. And that might help you track down how to get into that information. So that's the 3 pieces of our puzzle that we're talking about today. Starts with your domain name. That's your .com, your .org, your .whatever. Then that's going to pass over to your website host. That's where your website actually lives. And at the same time, you could have several email addresses that are also set up using your domain name, but that could be fulfilled by something even different, like Google Suites or the Microsoft Office Exchange. So whatever your flavor is, whatever your preference is, there's lots of options. In fact, there's almost too many options at any given moment. And if you're not sure what to do, that's no problem. Give me a call or send me an email and we'll figure out what's the right solution for you. That's what I always do. We talk about what's your situation, here's a couple options, and then we decide what's going to make the most sense for you. And it can change. We could try one thing, and if we find out it doesn't work, we could try something different. So let me know what questions you have about that. Those are the 3 pieces to our puzzle: domain name, website hosting, email setup.